Hello there, welcome to Fully Painted. This is the second episode in a 3-part series where I show you how I painted my beautiful Stegadons for my Seraphon army for the game Age of Sigmar. We spent the first episode painting the big dinos, and in case you missed that, you can find them right there in the corner. Initially I thought this would be a 2-part series, but it turned out this video was way too long and I had to split it up. So this one is going to focus on the platforms and the skin crew on top of the dinos. There's going to be some skinks, some bronze, and some gems. Hope you like it. And with that out of the way, grab your brushes, we're going to the lab. Now let's start with this video with painting the platform. I start by base coating all the platform bits with a dark grey. I do multiple thin coats of it to get a more uniform look. I do as I said, the platform stone bits and the poles as well. In retrospect, I feel like this was a wasted step, as I'm gonna darken it all with a black contrast paint, and I probably should have started with that black and then do the next highlight steps that you will see. This is my usual recipe for painting black, grey-ish objects. I really like the look of the contrast over that dark grey, which is why I'm doing a heavy coat of it, as you can see now. After that, I re-highlight zenithally with the airbrush all the grey bits with the previous grey. And after that, I do some edge highlight all over the grey bits. I do it very cleanly here, and in retrospect I think that was kind of a missed opportunity to add more texture and richness to the objects, the grey areas. I could have added a lot more stippling, dashes and what have you to give a bit more life and a worn look. Once that's done, I just put some white or off-white on all the places and the motifs that I want to be very colorful. As you can see, I do multiple coats of it for it to be very bright. So then when I do this current application of transparent paint, it looks very bright. I use contrast paint here, but as I said, just use any transparent paint you want. Here I'm going for very saturated colors because I want this platform to look very colorful. So I go for a red and a blue and a green as well. When I'm painting this, I'm trying to, when my brush leaves the surface, have most of the pigment deposited in the middle of the pattern motifs and the motifs. I want the edges to be the brightest. It helps me sell a sort of gem-like effect. And now I highlight all those patterns by simply adding some off-white to the previous contrast paint. I highlight the hedges and then just go back for a almost pure off-white dot on the corners to max out that shininess look I'm going for. Here it is. As you can see, it's very clean. I'm going for a very clean look on those places. Then I do a small base coat on the tissues on the side, tissues there. And then I go for the shields, the nice scaly shields on the side. Very decorative shields, I don't know why they would be defensive here. But anyway, after a base coat of a nice deep purple, I go for a wash of a very dark purple as well, just to do some recess shading between the scales. In retrospect, this was probably wasteful as well, and I probably should have gone for a first initial coat of that dark purple before re-highlighting all the scales, rebasing all the scales as I'm doing now with the initial purple. because yes, the scales were darkened a bit too much by the wash. And now I highlight it all by adding some pink color to the purple, so I keep it saturated by not just adding white. Choosing purple here is going to add a bit more warmth to it. And then I keep highlighting, I go higher and higher. At some point I switch from adding pink to adding off-white as well for like the corners of the scales. I'm going for a hard, shiny look on those scales, which is why I pushed the highlight and the contrast very high. I'm trying to target spots that are facing the light for the placement of my highlights. And then I do a simple glaze of purple ink to bring it all together and bring back some saturation. I also shoot some dark purple from below just to boost the shadows on those shields. It hit also the drapes as well, which is a good byproduct. I boost again the contrast here. I re-highlight, as you can see, after that boost of shadow, because I felt I lost a bit of the highlighting. I darkened it a bit much. Now we are on bones. This is a very simple recipe, and I focus mainly on my zenithal volumetric highlight of those places. I hit smaller and smaller area, focusing on the top facing spots, the top facing parts. Now I do a very quick job on all the wooden bits by doing one layer of contrast and then a very small highlight and simple highlight I might add by just adding off-white to the contrast paint. As you can see here, I mostly target areas that would catch the light, as in top facing surfaces. On this rope I'm using mostly overbrushing to go do it very quickly and keep that texture. Now onto the tip of the arrow. I want this to feel like a bit magical, so I start with a very shiny and dark black in the center, and then jade on the side. I want to go for a blend between a bluish jade and a more yellowish jade. So after my initial base coat of jade, I do a small wash and glaze of a dark blue before doing a glaze again, but adding the off-white to my jade. I add more off-white to continue the blend I got going, and then I do some edge highlight as well to keep the sort of magical gem or power sword look I'm going for. I'll make sure to try and hit those edges with the side of my brush, of course, to make the edge highlight easier. Now onto the patterns on the shields. This is straight up lifted from the battle tomes, the Seraphon battle tomes. I start with a nice darkish grey base coat before I highlight it all with a lighter grey. I try to match the highlights of the scales that I previously did with the purple. Now the jade I put on those drapes didn't suit me, so I switched it all to a green by adding a darker green glaze. Similar ones to the one I use on the patterns on the platform. I felt that jade was a bit too light and drawing the eye too much. And here you can see that shooting my dark purple through the airbrush helps with those drapes because I got a bit of a pre-shade going. Then I add some off-white to the green and do a bit of highlighting. Do a lot of small dashes for a blend. Now onto the the jade gems on the throne. This is a bit I really enjoyed painting, and I feel like the result was really good. Oh, felt really good for me. I do a good clean base coat of my jade color, and then a wash, a good all over wash with a dark blue mixed with the jade. This bit is is textured a lot, so the wash here is really helpful, and it helps define all the different forms and decorations. I also put some of the wash on the side, but more as a glaze. And after my initial wash, I keep using that blue color to get more of a blend and darken all the bits as well. I put those shadow really at the top of all those decorations to get a more of a gem look. You know, if you look at gem tutorials online, you see that the light is put at the bottom of the gems, and the top of the gem is usually a lot more dark, because that's how gems tend to look in real life. The light just traverses them. After multiple glazes, when I'm satisfied with how dark I made the gems look, I go back to my jade and then lighten up the bottom of those decorations. And I really like the progression I'm building up here. That dark blue to jade color is really my jam. I try to go for a blend by hitting smaller and smaller surfaces here. After that, I hit the edges of those decoration of the squares here to really convey this gem effect. I really like the clean look of those edge highlight. And then I start adding off-white to my jade color and do some edge highlight around all those decorating bits. At first I hit all the edges regardless. I'm not peculiar about which edge to hit. And afterwards I add some more off-white, and then I try to be more selective with the edges I hit. As you can see, I hit more top-facing edges this time. This progression feels quite magical to me. I really like that yellowish jade to dark bluish jade. Feels almost ethereal. Then I finish it all with dots of off-white to really sell that shiny look I'm going for. And I put it in very small spots that would really catch the light, corners and what have you. And that's it with the thrones. I kind of did the same thing for this engine of the gods. I just added a bit more slashes and dashes to the side of the stones to give it a more worn look. And now onto the skinks. Most of the work has been done through the pre-shade of my blue, followed by the light grey zenithal highlight. So I mostly paint the scales here on the back, first with a nice heavy coat of contrast paint. After that, I want to push the highlight and the contrast on the scales. So I start by highlighting the scales with enough white. I mostly go for edge highlighting, and I aim for a more volumetric highlight. I then push the shadows with a dark blue all over the scales to make the scale very contrasty. And then I bring it all together with a nice glaze of green. It's the same green I used before, of course. It's the same green I used before. And then I push the highlight on the scales one last time, mostly aiming for the scales that are around the shoulder, as they would catch most of the light. After that, I paint the spine. I do it following the exact recipe I use for most of my black stuff in this army, which is a first coat of dark grey that I do for all the black bits. And I follow that with a heavy glaze of Black Templar contrast paint. Nice camera work. After that, I go back to my original grey for some highlight. Again, as all my highlights, the idea here is to do volumetric highlighting. I hit the spots that are facing the light. I do it for everything here. And then I add some off-white to the grey for some final highlights. As you can see, I'm trying to go for a more shiny look, especially on those scales and those claws. As you can see on the spine here, I hit mostly the top edges and and the tippy tops of those spine spikes and what have you. Now that I've put some color onto my skink, I can judge if the skin needs some more highlighting or not, and I decided that it does, especially around the head, as I want it to be a good focus for the eye. I also hit hands and feet and even knees with this. I do it on the hands and feet especially because I know that I want to do a glaze over it later on, and I want that that highlight to inform the glaze. That glaze is bluish here, and it mostly on the feet, the hands and the knees and elbows as well, because I'm trying to emulate what you would do to paint a warm skin on a human. You know, add a bit of red on the spots where the skin is very, very small, thin is what I'm looking for. After that, I hit the whatever you call it on the back of the skink. Sorry, the English word for it is just eluding me right now. But I do a nice base coat of my jade before doing a wash of jade mixed with dark blue. Those colors are the exact same colors I used on all my jade bits on the platform. Trying to reuse colors to save time-ish, because this is a very long project. And then I add some black dots just for personality and to make every skink look a bit different. And then it's just finishing all the work, because like most of it is done here. So yellow glaze on the eyes, and then reddish gray glaze on the mouth and the eyes again as well, Tip of the tongue is lightened. And then we have a black pupil. The teeth as well, with some overbrushing. And a final white dot on the eye to make it look a bit shiny. And finally we get to the bronze. This is the exact same recipe I used on all the bronze bits on the dinos themselves in the previous video. So I do a first coat of that Greenstuff World metal pigment colored bronze, as I feel like it's one of the best metallic colors out there. Really good result. And after I've done a coat on all the bits I want to be metal, I do a nice heavy coat of Gold Gruntifer contrast paint. It looks really good to me. I really like that reddish brown for all my bronze gold bits. I do some very thin glazes as well with a darker contrast paint, just to boost the colors and the contrast. More glazing to make the shadows look quite deeper. As you can see, I try to end my brush strokes where I want the shadows to be darkest, because that's where the pigments are gonna pull. As you can see, there's quite a lot of it to do, and that took quite some time. Then I go back to my original bronze and just lighten up the bits I want to be light. As I said in the previous video, I'm trying to apply NMM theory to all of my highlighting, just with metallic paint. I try to find places that are gonna gather most of the light, and I boost them, highlight them quite a bit. And I do a fair bit of edge highlighting as well, as it makes metal look really good. And after I've done the bronze highlights, I'm gonna add a bit of aluminium into the mix for final highlights. On the throne here, I want to be the sitting spot on the throne to catch the motor slide, so that's where I'm gonna put most of my highlights. Gotta focus on that butt. There's a lot of edges to do on those. And of course we do the same thing for the skinks. They have less gold on them, but still a lot of bracelets. And I did the exact same thing on the crest of the Stegadon. I tried to have a big light go right in the center of it to draw the eye, and big shadow areas on the sides. There was a lot of edge highlighting involved in this. And that's how I did the platform and the crew. I'm really happy with the result. I find it quite readable despite all the bejangles and shiny things that are on top of it. I'm really proud of that. I like the look of the bronze and all the colorful bits, especially the engine. That jade is really fire. I quite like it. I like how the skink are really readable despite all the colors going on. I didn't show you how I did the priest and the chief, but it's just I really used a lot of the same techniques. But anyways, that's it for this video. I hope you found it useful. For the next one, we're gonna tackle the jungle bases. But in the meantime, I have to go give a presentation on making Jello in space. So until then, I hope you stay adventurous and that you keep painting, because painting is cool.